Just tell you a little bit.
I'm the endorsement. Yes, yep. Yes.
Hi, Nancy. Hello. 这是我们的国会议员。Nancy. OK.
Professor Zhiyue.
OK.
I've spoken to Dee about that. I've spoken to Denise, you know, but obviously
It's really the unified sort of history. So consensus by New Zealand and Wellington Association together.
we're competing now.
You shouldn't be competing. You should be
There's another group. There's another group that's come in, you know.
Yeah, front row seat for
Oh
you.
no, I'll take the back.
Take the back. You want to sit out early, eh?
Well, I do have to apologise at 3 for another event, but no, I'm happy at the back.
Okay, that's all right. So you're a backbencher at the moment.
I am still back.
But soon will be promoted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next government, you're going to be a minister. Okay. Anyway, so Professor Bo, as you can see from the brief CV I put in the reminder notice, that he is a specialist in contemporary Chinese politics, and he really has only started his research on New Zealand Chinese from the time when he's been in New Zealand after COVID had stopped, and he's spent a lot of time doing Wellington, but I've asked him to include in this presentation today Auckland Chinese people. But you know, I don't think we have a QA as more than an interactive session where I think Bo would like to understand the background of these New Zealand Chinese in Auckland, and if you give a brief background of your family history and whether he's keen to do a family history of people in Auckland. So if anybody's keen on that, you can speak to Bo later, privately.
So my information is very elementary. I've done some research on mostly open sources. So I hope I'll get your feedback on further information. So the theme of my talk today is kind of identity. Do you know what's the meaning of identity? Who you are, who I am, right? But identity is something that is not static. It's, I would say it's a dynamic. It changes over time. It changes over generations. It also changes within one's lifetime. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take this so-called generation perspective to kind of use some what I call comparative case studies to illustrate these changes over the years. You know, mostly early Chinese coming to New Zealand, they are coming from this province called Guangdong province. Some people call Canton. I don't speak Cantonese. I'm trying to learn Cantonese. So I will use Mandarin a lot of time, you know, when I speak Chinese characters. Use Pinyin more than Cantonese. These are the counties where I think we had a little talk today, actually he's not here, talk about the president of Dongzhen Association in Wellington. He's from one of the counties which is not here. It's called Gaoyao, County Gaoyao. And so is Kitty Fong, probably, you know, Peter Fong, or the pastor of the New Zealand, you know, probably know there, you know, the Wellington is the first European settlement. And, you know, I think in the year of 1840, there were 5 ships coming to Wellington. One of the ships is called Oriental. I probably know this guy called James Bertrand. He's called himself, considers himself New Zealand Marco Polo. He traveled around in China. They made a record of his traveling, and then he was captured by the Japanese in Hong Kong. He was PMW in Hong Kong and in Tokyo. He's a very interesting guy. His family came on one of these ships to Wellington. And another ship is called Bolton. Probably heard this Bolton Street. Bolton Street is named after this ship. This ship arrived in Wellington on April 21st, 1840. And there's also Bolton cemeteries, and there's also Bolton Hotel. Bolton Hotel was started by Jack Chen. I think Jack Chen is here in Auckland. He bought a land next to Reserve Bank of New Zealand. Then he built this hotel, 5-star hotel in Bolton Street. Anyway, second settlement was Nelson. Probably we just mentioned this families from Zhongshan. The first recorded Chinese is called Aotearoa, arrived in Nelson on October 25th after a 5-month trip from England, and there were 185 passengers on the ship. He was not one of them because he was a steward. But he was so impressed by the weather in Nelson, he decided to jump the ship, and therefore, when the ship was leaving, he was hiding in the hills. But later he married to his neighbor and had a son, but the son actually is supposed to be the neighbor's son, but actually his biological son. One of the prime ministers of the New Zealand, I think the 30th prime minister, called Bill Rowling, is nephew of his neighbor, William Rawlings. Anyway, long story. Briefly speaking, I divide this into Chinese history of Chinese in New Zealand into different periods. Basically, you can talk about early period, that is before poll tax period. Then you have a poll tax period from 1882 to 1944. Then you have a post-World War period, and then you have new era since 1987. Then you have a government apology. I think the New Zealand government is the only government in the world that apologized officially to the taxpayers. So I think that's really a good thing. So in terms of the amount of a tax payment, poll tax, the Chinese were only ethnic group that were charged with this poll tax. Initially, it was £10 for every single Chinese. If you translate into today's term, it's more than $2,000. But later they raised to 100, which is more than 24,000 in today's term. But in terms of the living expenses, this is almost like 5 years of living expenses for a single man. Okay, well, I'm going to go very quickly to, basically we're talking about generational changes. I'm going to go to major families in Auckland. This is actually my new knowledge, very new knowledge. Actually, I've learned over the past a week or so. So there's a lot of gaps in my knowledge. Basically, I wanted to go through these different generations to demonstrate or to illustrate the kind of identity change over time. A history of New Zealand is incomplete without a history or chapter of Chinese history of New Zealand Chinese in it. But a history of New Zealand Chinese is incomplete without history of Chen Dazhi or Archie family history. This is a man who came to Auckland almost like by accident, because their initial goal was to go to South Island for gold, because the New Zealand was known for producing gold, a new gold mountain, right? So, but they were so seasick, so they decided not to go any further. So they decided to stay on in Auckland. So the year of 1882 was very, very important for this man, because in this year, 3 things happened to him. Number one, he became naturalized subject in New Zealand. Number two, he leased a piece of land with his brother, Asher, to become a market gardener. Number three, he started his first, actually it's also Auckland's first fruit shop at 13 Queen Street. So then he decided to get married. Actually, it was pretty late. This is actually interesting. A lot of people say he come here, his wife arrived and they remarried. No, the lady, called Rain C. Actually, according to this poll tax record, her name was Chen Si. Actually, her real name is Chong, should be Chongshi, Zhongshi. But anyway, she arrived on 30th of December 1885 under the name of Chen Shi, age 16. So they were married on 16th of January 1886. It was a big thing in the newspaper. They say the bride was about 17 years old. So I think this was the bride, the bride just came to get married. But somehow she paid her poll tax. And because at that time they were not aware that, as a naturalized subject, your wife doesn't have to pay poll tax. So they settled down in Auckland. They made a fortune. Basically, Archie made a fortune in New Zealand, then returned home in China, in Guangzhou, and in 1922, and he died there. So very briefly, his history, if you use Chinese to summarize, is 光宗耀祖，落叶归根, right? If you summarize in English, in one sentence, he had very happy life as a Chinese because he was able to retire back home and die in his homeland. So he rested in peace in his home country. So this is very typical of Chinese of his age. First generation. But there are some regrets for the man and his wife. He had 4 sons. His first son, George, died at the age of 6. And the second son died at the age of 40. And the funeral was delayed because the old couple were in China. They retired in China, but heard news of the death of their son. They have to come back. So the funeral has to be postponed in order for the old couple to come back. During this funeral, Clyman's home in Rumera was broken because some robbers thieves decided this is a good time to break in. But they did not take much money because they had a break-in 6 months earlier, so they deposit all the money cash into the bank. So not so much loss, but a lot of vandalism at home. So Clyman Archie had married twice, first to Choi Mei Lum, and with 3 children, and second wife is Mei Yok Dong with 2 children. The third generation, most important example is Tom Henry, or Tom, the youngest children of this family. He was born in 1928. He went to China at the age of 3 in 1931. And he later came back to go to school. he was planning to become architect. He went to university, he wanted to become an architect. But all of a sudden, his father passed away. He said, well, he need to take over this family business of the fruit shop. But I think he married in 1954, right? Molly is here. And, but in 1950s, Tom had a trip to the US. He was so impressed by these supermarkets in the US. He came back, he said, he told Molly, I'm gonna do something different. He put all his resources together. He said, I'm gonna do something very big. So he started this first American-style supermarket on this 14,000 square meters in the land of 1.1 acre place. I think June 18th, 1958 was the opening day. It was sensational because there are so many people, so many cars. It caused traffic jam. So they have to go to the radio, tell the public not to come any longer because everything is sold out. So it was huge success. There were even cartoons made for this day. Say Food Town, that was 1958. Aotearoa. I remember there were so many cars. They had to shut down the street, and by noon they had to get the radio to the public, to tell the public, don't come. So 3 years later, in 1961, they opened the second food town. So in 1970s, Tom was considered the most successful businessman in the history of New Zealand. And they have 4 children here. Some of them are here. Bonnie is here. They are 4 sisters. This is another family. It's quite interesting because Archie, I thought, I'm a Mandarin speaker. Archie, I thought that Archie was a relatively unique name. But when I did my research, I find Archie was a common name. There's so many people called not Archie. So you have to say Mr. Archie from Auckland, or Mr. Archie, market gardener of Mechanics Bay, or something. So if you just do a search on Archie, I actually found a different Archie. This is Archie. Probably know Fred Wong. Used to be the president, chairman of the ACCC from 1975 to 1977. His grandfather is named Archie. And actually, his poll tax was, he came under the name of Archie. But the Archie is not the same Archie. Archie is, this is Ya Xi. Ah is not Ah actually is Ya. And Ya Xi, this is Ya Zhi, different. His grandfather came in 1904 and was a market gardener. And he brought his son, his eldest son from his first wife, Wang Kwa Song, Wang Tianhua, anyway. And then Fred was born in China. He came under student permit, but he arrived with his mother and his father's half-brother on the same boat in 1940. So they were initially market gardeners, but later on they started to do fruit shop. And Fred also invested in old houses. He basically bought these rundown houses and renovate them and rent them. So basically he made a lot of money by doing that. So part of my learning is that from this evidence, that is, Ya is not is actually Ya. and Yashi, and also Yaci. Here, one little question mark here is that actually one of the brochures mentioned Wang Qiyu's son was founding member of Guangzhou Club, but I have a little doubt on that because this club was incorporated on April 11th, 1923, but his father arrived in New Zealand in 1924. So in that sense, I don't think he's initial member. Maybe he's a member of this club, but not founding member. You know, there are 4 founding members. We'll talk about a little bit later, but he is not one of them. Okay, this is another major family in Auckland. Wang Yicheng actually can talk about between Wellington and Auckland. But anyway, the family history has very little information about the first generation, Huang Hinmin. So I've done some research on this grandfather or father of Wang Yicheng. Very interesting. This person, I think, this is my speculation, he came before 1882 because everybody else is paying poll tax, but he's being refunded poll tax in 1892. My guess is that maybe the refund was for his wife, not for himself. If it's for himself, that means he came before 1882. If it's for his wife, we have to see whether his wife paid for the poll tax, probably 1891. Anyway, he was very important person because he was bookkeeper of the very famous business in Dunedin. In 1871, there were 2 major businesses in Dunedin. One is Hong Yun Li, one is SOJOURNERS. So this business belonged to the county of Zhengcheng. So basically they are recruiting people from Zhengcheng in the early days. And SOJOURNERS was recruiting people from Panyu. And so Jinyuan Li, actually they translated into Golden Spring Profits. It's located in a very, I think it's called Princess Street in Dunedin. But Wang Hinmin was also very musical. He gave a solo performance of Chinese flute at the opening of Chinese Mission Church in Dunedin in 1897. He had 7 sons. The youngest one was Wang Yicheng. He returned to China in 1904. I think it's similar to the Ashi story. This is kind of when you get old, you go back home, you die home. Right, so I think he had a very successful and complete life in his own way. So his identity is with Chinese. I'm Chinese, I need to go back to China and die there. And his son came, well, this is also a little debate. I think the family history is saying, he came in 1907, but I did my research, I find actually he came in 1906. I have a whole text number. You can actually check. And he married En Shi. En Shi is actually, En is a family name. Shi is actually it's name for wife. It's a Shi. It's not really a name. Their son is called George Wang, and they moved. The Yicheng moved to Auckland in around 1912 because Reverend Dong interviewed him then. And then he started this company, very, very famous company called Wah Zhong in 1913 with 3 partners initially, and later became just 2 partners. In 1960, he and his wife were 2nd largest donors to the Auckland Chinese Hall. They donated £400 to the start of this Chinese Hall. And then he died at the age of 89 in Auckland. So like a second generation, he's okay dying and rest in peace in the foreign land. And his son George Wam came to New Zealand in 1920 at a very young age, but he had 6 children. Then one of his children, the family, actually he started his own business, food shop, but that first shop was not very successful because he passed on to one of his children, Diana. Diana was not particularly interested in this fruit shop, but one of the children, Choi Boy, was carrying on to become successor of his grandfather's business, Wang Zhang. And it was really a big business in 1960s and 70s and 80s. And they provided 90% of the shipping lines. And in 1986, I think they all even provided service for Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth. When the Queen visited New Zealand, he got a letter of appreciation from Buckingham Palace. They sold business in 1991 to Jack Chen and his partner. Jack Chen is the one who started the Bolton Hotel and then sold the building in 2007 and moved to the US to be with his family. Okay, Peter Chen. This is another long story. Peter Chen's grandfather, called Chen Fuan, actually, if you go back to do the church search, and you couldn't find many entries if you search for the full name. Actually, he's better known as Fu An. And he came to New Zealand in 1885 and became naturalized subject in 1894. He was involved in this Ventana business. In 1902, they shipped 499 bodies from New Zealand back to China. That ship sank, and he was contact person in Wellington. He helped to load these 10 bodies from Wellington. So he was a community leader in Wellington, and he was campaigning for his wife to be coming to New Zealand without having to pay poll tax. Because, in 1896, they raised the poll tax to 100. That's all the way through the roof. So he said, I'm naturalized subject. Can I bring my wife without have to pay the poll tax? So he wrote letters to the governor, to the prime minister, and so on and so forth. And he brought his wife over. Actually had 2 wives. One wife left in China, one wife coming over here to New Zealand. Then he managed to get a refund later on. But his wife came in August 1897. Then 2 other chains from the same village, Xinjie, I call it Xinjie or Xingai, followed suit. They brought their wives to New Zealand in January 1898. One of them actually is called James Chenting. He had a very, very big wedding on the boat before landing. So it was very well reported in the newspaper. Eventually, all 3 got refunds for their poll tax payment because they were naturalized subjects of the New Zealand. So, but he's, Chen Fuan got very, very sick in 1907. Then he decided to pass on his business, Yichong'en in Corny Place, to James Chenting. He passed away in 1908. He had 8 children with his second wife. One of them, actually youngest, is called William Sun Chong, which is the father of Peter Tian. William was only 3 years old when his father died. So his mother decided to take the whole family, actually ashes or bones of his father and the whole family back home. Then, but later on, they decided to come back, one by one. He came back to New Zealand in 1919 with his elder brother, Thomas. In theory, he was born in New Zealand. He was not supposed to pay poll tax, but I think he paid, as well as his elder brother, both paid poll tax. And he married twice also. Then two sons from first wife and then 7 children from second wife. And I think Peter told a story about his 2 mothers giving birth to 2 children. One is Ronald. Actually, he misremembered. It was supposed to 1936. He's another half sibling was 1935. I think it's his daughter. Anyway, and but his second wife was born in Australia. And because her father was from Gualing village of Gualing, and they had children over there, but they decided to send all the 3 daughters, actually married twice, and sent the 3 daughters from second marriage to Gualing, and so married to Annie, yeah. And William brought his second wife to New Zealand from Australia in 1941. In his application, he claimed his first wife died in China. Therefore, there's only one wife. He's going to bring this wife over. I think this little secret, family secret, was discovered much later because at the time, Peter was still in China. He had no idea what was going on until probably the death of his father in 1965. He probably went through his father's kind of remains and discovered this kind of information. Then the 2 brothers brought their mother to New Zealand in 1973. Peter was born in China, but he came by airplane, which is very rare. In 1949, they arrived in Auckland on September 19th, 1949. There was no regular service of direct airlines from Hong Kong to New Zealand until 1983. May 4th, 1983 was the first airplane coming from Hong Kong to Auckland. So they were privileged class in a way. So somehow he had a problem with his father because of the second marriage. Anyway. And he married to Louis Fong. This is actually a very interesting family story because at that time, I don't think he ever met his father-in-law because his father-in-law died in 1948. He came in 1949, so they missed each other. But I think his marriage is arranged by his mother-in-law, which is a strong woman. I think within 10 years, she started and run successfully 7 different fruit shops. So that's why I think Peter found his spouse. Anyway, Peter, very well known. Even the little business, the Taiping, actually started by his mother, second mother, Annie. Initially, they started this little fruit shop, but he expanded into a large chain of food shops of 8 food shops, even more, 9. Yeah. Let's move on. Tom's Du family. This is very interesting because the birth year, I've been struggling with this birth year because you have tax payment one year, you have the court cases, different numbers. Eventually, I figured out it should be 1870. So he came as Thomas. This is very bizarre. Initially, when you come with Chinese name, but somehow his text form had this English name on it. But he came 1902. He came in 1902, and he was naturalized in 1904. I think he was very much a community-spirited man. He was trying to help people from his home village, home county. So he used his premises in, I think it's 49 Hobson Street, trying to accommodate the incoming immigrants from China, especially from his own county. But he was accused of running a common gaming house. That's why he appeared in a lot of lawsuits. Later on, he made a donation of £50 to the Auckland hospital with a letter saying, "We are running a newly established club. So basically, this is not a gaming house. This is actually a club." But at that time in 1917 to 1922, because you were not registered with the government as such, of course there's a suspicion that you're doing something different. So later on, on April 11th, 1923, they decide to register and make themselves official incorporated club. So basically, he was willing to help other people, and his son carried on. Let me just go here. Yeah, he had 3 sons, 1 daughter, and actually these names are very new to me. Actually, it's also familiar. William, this is interesting. I used to live. I spent about half a year in Bell Road, Auckland. Every time I went to Newmarket, I all passed to this little clinic called Dr. William Du Acupuncture. I was very curious, who is this a clinic? Later on, I discovered, actually very recently, William is self-taught acupuncturist. And he started to do this practice, quite effective, but initially there were complaints, he's saying, he's doing this, without license or something. Later on, he decided, in 1977, he decided to start an association. This is called Auckland Acupuncture Society or something now. So he's a founder of this society. He's a founding president from 1977 to 1984. So it's quite fascinating about this family. Then, see, this is the 4 so-called founding members. I think this is the name of this Tom's Wong number 1, Huang Sang Zhao. And he was born, number 2, a second generation, came in 1919, and he was secretary of this 31 member of the committee of the ACH in 1960. He had 4 sons. His second son, Donald, was engaged to a lady, Ivy Wong, from Shantou in 1944, I think. This is the third generation. He was born, actually, if he's alive, he's 100 years old already. Yeah, Tom's 3, he was born in 1925. Now it's 2025, right? So he had 5 children and 12 grandchildren. Okay, Kai's family. I'm still learning. I don't know all the details. I just venture with my little information. I hope I'll get feedback from Kai and the family. 4 generations. These, Lui brothers, they are actually first generation New Zealanders, and they came in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Brother number 1 came in, brother number 2 came earlier, 1891, but I couldn't find poll tax information, but brother number 1 came in 1892, initially I think they went to Wellington and also went to Greenmouth and to run fruit shops. Initially in Torres Strait and then Greenmouth. There are so many stories along this line. One is actually the children from the 6 children from the second brother number 2, James. There are 2 James. This James ZhiYue Bo, was a master table tennis player. He was dominant in, I think, in Greenmouth from 1937 all the way to 1950s. He beat up, play singles, doubles, mixed doubles. He always won, most times. Yeah, very very popular player in the South Island. The Lu's grandfather, called Lu Hongxiu, was youngest. He came in 1904. Initially was running the fruit shops in Wellington and Greenmouth. He was a founding member of the Tongzheng Association in 1925. Probably you understand these founding members are not initial members of the committee or whatever. They are 21 people. They had this idea, we want to start this Tongzheng Association. So they are the ones who start the whole association. Then they were supported by 48 so-called supporting founding members. So the Tongzheng Association was officially established in 1926, but in 1 year earlier, they already started this preparation. They even bought a building in Frederick Street, a number 2 building there, still standing there. He had 5 children. The first child is called ZhiYue Bo, is father of Kai. He came in I think he was married in 1916 to Wang Ji Queen. Then he came over in 1918. He was running fruit shops in Westport and Wellington. Very interesting. His first son is called Tom. He was born in 1921. But I think maybe Kai has to correct me. He himself started a laundry in 1921 under the name of his son, or maybe he wanted to call himself Tom Lu, because he advertised this laundry, saying, we just started a new business of laundry. I'd like to get your attention, get your business. If you wanted to drop by, they run laundry from Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you want to drop your laundry, you can either drop in this particular street or drop to this fruit shop owned by ZhiYue Bo. So I think, Tom was just a little baby, I don't think he was running the laundry. I think the father was running the laundry. Yeah, this is actually Kai. I was just learning because I knew Kai's full name was Kai Shek because he was being recognized in January 2025 on one of the words. The full name was Kai Shek. I recognize that name because Chiang Kai-shek had the same given name, but I did not know the story behind it. Actually, Kai told me that his father was an admirer of President Chiang Kai-shek at the time because in World War II, we were fighting against Japanese. He decided to name the little boy Kai-shek, so we got a Liu Kai-shek. He came to Wellington in 1946 at age of 5 because his elder brothers, actually they were decades older. His oldest brother was 20 years older. Tom was born in 1921. Jim was born in 1922. So they were taking a vacation in Wellington. They liked this fruit shop. They bought a fruit shop at 162 Cuba Street. And they said, we're going to move there. So the whole family decided to move along with them. But I think they ran that fruit shop just for 1 year. In 1947, they sold the fruit shop and they moved to the Lower Hutt. So I think Kai grew up in Lower Hutt. He graduated from University of Canterbury in 1965. I think he was somehow feel underappreciated in New Zealand. He said, I'd like to show my abilities. He went to Australia and had a big black splash. There, then he came back. This is Rose's family. This is also a fascinating story. Taishan. This is I think the grandfather came first, of course, and then the father, and also grandfather had 2 wives and also children from different wives, and therefore the ages are kind of somehow the children of his father could be younger or could be older than his grandfather's children anyway. And I just want to show you one photo. This I think one of the favorite photos of Rose because these 3 people are closest to her. This lady with hat is her mother. And her mother was born, this is, I have a little different research result. I think according to the tombstone was March 13th, but according to some books it's 18th of March. I think it's March, that's for sure. 1918. Her family village called Jinbiancun. It's a village beside the well, Jinbiancun, in the northwest corner of this Taishan. And her grandparents and a grandfather and the father were running a chain of coffee shops in Canada. So the family was well-to-do, but her name was called Huan Hao. Probably you know this Huan is, Hao is good, right? Huan is exchange. So my feeling is somehow her father was expecting a boy instead of a girl. Therefore, he wished somehow it would be better if I had a boy. So Huan, exchange, Huan Hao. But later, her mother was very well educated in Chinese, later, her mother decided to change the character from Huan exchange to Huan Fa. That's a shiny Huan Hao. So I think so. Her mother was provided with what's called noi, a maid. So she didn't have to do a physical labor. She could go to school to be educated. So she was very educated in Chinese classics. But during this war, and they got a rumor saying her father, her grandfather lost all the fortune because buried in different places, couldn't find them, and loaned the money to others, and they were running away because of the Japanese. And so his father was in Canada, but there were rumors saying her father died in Canada. So he was married to a man from a neighboring village called Longtian, Dragon's Field. So they were married. I think actually she came as a bride in 1940. This little baby is Rose's elder sister, Maya. This is her father. Maya passed away at the age of 15 in 1956. And her father passed away in 1958. So actually her mother had a fear, somehow she would die, she would be widowed at a young age. She did, at the age of 40 in 1958. But she had one regret. She never sent enough money to home to help her younger brother, who died in his 20s because not enough money to cover for medical expenses. But she passed away at the age of 73 in 1991. This is the area where Rose grew up, Gray Street, Gray Avenue, which is kind of a Chinatown in Auckland. And they had a laundry, I think they had a laundry at 59 Gray Street, and they lived in 69 Grays Avenue. Okay, Dr. Lee. This is, do you know why Dr. Lee is a doctor? Very interesting, because his father was from ZhiYue village in Zhengcheng, and his father wanted to come to New Zealand, did not have money, so he borrowed money from relatives. He spent six months in Guangzhou to study English. Then he came over. Yeah, he came over, and then he later he married a lady, Li Hua, and then but the Li family named this little girl in a boy's name. It's called Ajai. Ajai is a boy's name because there's a high fatality rate for females and for girls in the family. But the wife was kind of sick all the time. So with permission from the wife, Li Renzhang married second wife in 1932. In 1934, both wives gave birth to two little babies, both boys. One is Gan Pei, Gan is Jin, gold, right? One is Yu Pei, jade. Gan Pei, Yu Pei. And when the Yu Pei was 2.5 years old, he was sick. He was sent to a local doctor. He was given a prescription of doing, some herbs, also urine from his elder brother. It's called Zhu Pei. Elder brother, probably Chinese called Tong Bian. Tong Bian is the urine from boys, especially boys, are supposed to be therapeutic. So he drank the urine and then died later on. So this little boy, he was born in 1926, was somehow guilty of this death of his younger half-brother. For a long time, of course, he's innocent, but somehow he's responsible, or his urine is responsible for the death of the younger half-brother. So later on, he came as a student, but he's working as market garden. He decided he encouraged his younger brother, which is Ganpei, to study medicine. So I'm going to take care of family business, you go study and do medical study. That's why Ganpei later became doctor. He went to Dunedin. He was married in 1956, but he graduated in 1959. He initially started his practice in Dunedin as a psychiatrist. But later on, his mother had a stroke. He had to move closer, and later he became kind of president, a chairman of the ACCC. This is also another interesting story because Willie Young, when you look at name in English, you thought this man, his surname is Young. There are a lot of families Young, but actually his family's surname is Dong because his father came as Dong Wei Young. Therefore, the given name is taken as a family name. Therefore, he inherited this name as a Young. Therefore, he's being known as a Willie Young for a long time until much later. Well, and I think our time is almost up. Basically, there are a lot of factors and push factors and pull factors. These push and pull factors cause the families to turn twist and decide whether we should settle here and there. Because a lot of families, during these 1930s to World War II, they came on the temporary visa, 2-year permit. They are supposed to go back home, to go back to China, along with the children born in New Zealand after their permit. But later on, the New Zealand government, Prime Minister Fraser, decided it's not a good idea to send them home. This is their home. They should stay. So they decided to give them permanent residence here. Later, allow them to be naturalized in New Zealand. I think I'm going to stop here, and we'll have questions and answers. I'd like to hear your views. I'd like to hear your stories of your families. Thank you very much.
I think the next slide is very.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Well, basically, this is my kind of almost like argument. I have a feeling during my research that we are gradually losing Chinese heritage. First generations, they don't know anything about English. They know Chinese. They have a strong identification with Chinese. They speak Chinese, spoke Chinese, wrote Chinese, and they know their Chinese roots. But later generations, they gradually, because of lack of usage, some people even have a Chinese name, they don't know their Chinese names any longer because they don't use it. And I probably heard Helena Wong wrote a book called Being Chinese, a New Zealander story. In that entire book, you don't...
Do, that is your grandmother? Mother. Grand. Grand, speak to you. Yeah, so there's a connection with Millie Do.
Oh, Millie, okay.
And also the guy Louis you talked about.
Yeah.
As I told you, he's the last person in New Zealand
to
pay the poll tax in 1932.
1932.
So the poll tax was not rescinded till 1944, but no one paid it after 1932. So that's another interesting one to put in your books.
Yeah.
And you've done a great job in preparing this because you haven't had the opportunity.
And then also books by poll tax and Fruits of Labor and Sound of Soil and Pharaoh Guangdong laundry, all these books.